2021 to 2026. After today's conference, the first budget call circular for the next financial year will be issued on the 15th of September 2022 to guide the planning and budgeting for next financial year in line with the Public Finance and Management Act. The regional workshops to consult the local governments and other stakeholders at that level will take place immediately thereafter. I now take this opportunity to invite the Honourable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development to welcome the Right Honourable Prime Minister to this function. Honourable Minister, sir, you are most welcome. Thank you.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable colleagues, ministers, development partners, participants from government ministries, departments and agencies, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Are you hungry? It's with utmost pleasure that I welcome you to this occasion, which is a part of the series of stakeholder engagements on the budget strategy for financial year 23-24. As stated by my Deputy Secretary Treasury, today marks the start of the national consultative process on the planning and the budgeting process for financial year 23-24, as embedded in both the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda and the Public Finance Management Act 2015 as amended. This will be followed by the local government regional consultative meetings scheduled to take place from 19th September to 7th October this year. To my colleague ministers and your respective permanent secretaries and heads of government institutions under your areas of jurisdiction, development partners, and all our esteemed stakeholders, it is important that we give our best to validate this strategy together to facilitate the development of next financial year's, to facilitate the development of next financial year's budget. Your input is of paramount importance to the budget process. Honorable Prime Minister, I now take this the honor to officially invite you to chair and steer this consultative conference. You are most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honorable ministers, colleague members of parliament, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors and high commissioners, the chairperson, local government, development committees, partner groups, the LOC5 chairpersons, resident district commissioners, the chief administrative officers present, civil society, private sector, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Our dear guests, with utmost pleasure and honor, I wish to welcome you all to this National Budget Conference for the financial year 2023-2024, which is part of the budget consultative process in accordance with Section 13(2) of the Public Financial Management Act 2015 as amended. In accordance with the Comprehensive National Planning Framework approved in 2007, the government of Uganda is in the third year of implementing the third National Development Plan, that is 2020, 2021, 2024, 2025. Unlike National Development Plan 1, National Development Plan 2, the third National Development Plan implementation period has been affected adversely by global shocks, which the assumptions made during the development of the plan. The National Development Plan 3 projected the real GDP growth to average at 6.5% during the National Development Plan 3 period on assumption of effective implementation of the planned projects, robust global and regional economic prospects, and a conducive microeconomic environment. However, the real GDP growth rate was at 3.5% and 4.6% during the financial year 2020-2021 and the financial year 2021-2022 respectively, and is projected to grow at 5.5% and 6.3% for the financial year 2022-2023 and 2023-2024 respectively. This trend is attributed to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia and Ukraine geopolitical conflicts, floods, droughts, and other climate change related hazards. The COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war have affected people's livelihoods and disrupted the global supply network, resulting into shortages and hence inflation. Honorable ministers and colleagues, the pickup in inflation has led to tightening of monetary policy, thus rise in the interest rates, which has increased the cost of deficit financing. This has affected the implementation of the National Development Plan 3 during the first half, and it is on this background that the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, together with the National Planning Authority, is prioritizing the program implementation action plans within the context of realistic resource mobilization to finance the plan. Nonetheless, under the able leadership of His Excellency the President, and with support of all the stakeholders here and those who have not made it, we have been able to navigate through the socio-economic turbulences, and we are committed to consolidating our resilience to accelerate economic recovery. Specifically, government is repositioning debt as a catalyst for economic recovery by giving priority to growth-enhancing sectors. Government will also continue focusing on enhancing domestic revenue mobilization, improving value addition, and boosting export growth. Priority will would also be given to addressing binding constraints to the private sector like energy, roads, and access to affordable capital in order to ensure sustainable economic growth. Allow me to extend my appreciation once again to HE, the President, for the able leadership and policy guidance during the hard times, and to all those who supported Uganda in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Section 13(2) of the Public Finance Management Act 2015 requires government to prepare annual budget estimates in consultation with relevant stakeholders. It is on this basis that we are here for the National Budget Conference, which kickstarts the budget consultative process for the financial year 2023-2024. The objective of this conference, therefore, is to consult with our relevant stakeholders on the budget strategy for the financial year 2023-2024. As you are aware, the National Planning Authority is undertaking the midterm review of the National Development Plan 3, and the outcome of the process is expected to shape the budget strategy, taking into consideration the achievements so far, the national, regional, and global patterns of socio-economic fundamentals. Honorable colleagues and members present, in resonance with the East African theme, accelerating the economic recovery and enhancing productive sectors for improved livelihoods, the National Vision Statement is a transformed Ugandan society for a peasant to a modern and prosperous country within 30 years, as well as the National Development Plan 3 theme, increasing household incomes and improving the quality of lives of all Ugandans. The theme for the budget for the financial year 2023-2024 has remained full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, and market access. Honorable ministers and colleagues, as I mentioned earlier, the National Planning Authority is at the final stages of National Development Plan 3 midterm review. The exercise has been undertaken in consultation with relevant stakeholders in light of the prevailing economic environment orchestrated by global health and geopolitical emergencies like COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukraine war, whose impact are real and have not only impacted on the domestic and international resources mobilization, but also on the commodity prices. The objectives of this review are to determine the progress made towards the achievement of National Development Plan 3 objectives and outcomes at both national and program level. To validate the key underlying assumptions and reprioritize the plan, taking into consideration the current socio-economic and institutional challenges, ongoing reforms and emerging priorities with high impact that are attainable within the current resource envelope. Honorable ministers and colleagues and members present, following the adoption of the program-based planning and budgeting, we have been in the process of aligning the whole government to the new reform. The program and institutional plans and budgets, as well as the public financial management system, such as the program budgeting system and integrated financial management system, IFMIS, have been realigned. Whereas the program working groups have been the discretion to agree on the program priorities aligned to the budget strategy for the year and the NDP3, there have been limited discretion in resource allocation. We are therefore now in the process of realigning the medium-term expenditure framework from sector to program level to expand the discretion of program working groups to reprioritization of resources and addition to the interventions. The program approach to planning and budgeting is aimed at promoting a comprehensive and integrated approach to addressing bottlenecks to socio-economic transformation for the attainment of the national development results. It is on this basis that the Parish development model is premised on 7 pillars. Effective financial year 2023-2024, the medium-term expenditure framework will be allocated by program. The program working groups will be required to agree on the priorities aligned to the budget strategy and advise the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development on the vote level allocations in accordance with the agreed priorities. This requires fully constituted and operational program secretariats, program working groups, and program leadership committees. In accordance with the objective of rationalization of government, the guidelines require program secretariat to be domiciled in the planning department or a unit of the lead ministry to avoid duplication of functions. I therefore call upon the program lead ministries, the National Planning Authority, and the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development to ensure that the program institutional frameworks are fully constituted and operationalized to facilitate a smooth transition from vote to program level medium expenditure framework. This requires the lead ministries to ensure that program secretariats are established and functional. Quarterly program working groups and program leadership committee meetings are held. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development and the National Planning Authority, in collaboration with my office, to rationalize the available resource to facilitate to facilitate the program secretariats and provide the necessary technical support. Our distinguished guests, the government of Uganda has several performance management frameworks which generate reports on implementation and oversight of government plans. However, there has been no deliberate action to recognize the government institutions that have performed well, which in a way dampens the spirit of performance improvement based on management in the service. In this regard, we have come up with a Service Excellence Award to be presented to the top 5 best performing central and local governments. The votes were rated by correlating scores in the various performance assessment reports, generating an average and ranking them. In order to ensure independence and objectivity, the assessment was undertaken by a select committee comprising external members, budget conference partners, namely civil society budget advocacy group, advocates coalition for development and environment, that is ACCOD, a federation of small and medium scale enterprises, Uganda Manufacturers Association, Uganda Local Government Association, and Overseas Development Institute. They will be presented the awards to the top 5 central and local government votes. Our distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the impact of environmental degradation on climate change is real. Many economies, including Uganda, are paying a heavy price. I therefore call upon all of us to ensure that the budget strategy for the financial year 2023-2024 is pro-green growth. Ladies and gentlemen, I now take the honor to declare the budget, National Budget Conference for the financial year 2023-2024 open. And I pray for fruitful deliberations to generate strategic interventions that will propel Uganda's economy back to the pre-pandemic growth path and transform the 39% households from subsistence to money economy. I thank you for listening to me. For God and my country. Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development to present the budget strategy for the financial year 2023-2024. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. With your permission, can I remove this?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
You are far. And you were tested.
The Right Honorable Prime Minister, colleagues ministers, all members of Parliament who are here, Your Excellencies, ambassadors and heads of diplomatic missions, the head of public service and secretary to cabinet, the deputy head of public service and deputy secretary to cabinet, permanent secretaries and heads of government institutions, the chairpersons, local development partner group, the chairperson, Uganda Local Government Association, the civil society, members of private sector, all invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have a document here which may sound like as if I'm delivering a budget speech, but you'll bear with me so that you pick the essence of what we are going to do this today. Right Honorable Prime Minister, the budget strategy for the next financial year 23-24 addresses the socio-economic challenges we face today and builds on the strong foundation we have laid in the past. Economic recovery from the effects of the global COVID-19 pandemic remains slow, This is due to four major macroeconomic shocks, namely the rising global inflation, high and rising interest rates, high debt levels, and the strong US dollar, which caused the depreciation of the Uganda shilling and rising domestic inflation. The combined impact of these shocks has been the decline in real incomes, leading to rising household poverty. In addition, the cost of borrowing has increased sharply, and fiscal room and flexibility have reduced further. Arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, government put in place measures aimed at supporting economic recovery through provision of cheap and accessible credit under the Uganda Development Bank, Uganda Development Corporation, Small Business Recovery Fund, and the Agricultural Credit Facility. In this financial year 22-23, however, the impact of microeconomic shocks has required a change in policy by controlling government expenditure to contain inflation and restore macroeconomic stability, as well as long-term fiscal sustainability and debt management, or as the Bank of Uganda adjusts the central bank rate. Let me read this again, because people have been saying, money, Minister, you have not fulfilled our budget. You have not. So let me read this. In this financial year, however, the impact of macroeconomic shocks has required a change in policy by controlling government expenditure to contain inflation, restore macroeconomic stability, as well as long-term fiscal stability and the debt management, as Bank of Uganda adjusts the central bank credit. Whereas priority has therefore been given to economic recovery from the pandemic and mitigating the recent macroeconomic shocks, focus has also been shifted to measures to transform the 39% of our households in subsistence economy into the money economy. Right, Honourable Prime Minister, the budget strategy for this coming financial year, 23-24, therefore, seeks to build on the progress achieved to date since the outbreak of the pandemic in 2020. In this regard, therefore, the theme for the next budget will remain the same as the one of financial year. And let me read it. Full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, and market access. The overall objective of the financial year 23-24 budget strategy is to restore the economy back to the medium-term growth path of 6 to 7% per annum, improve competitiveness of the economy, and to sustain Uganda's socio-economic transformation agenda. In this presentation, I will cover very briefly the following. 1, the state of the economy and the economic growth prospects for the coming financial year. 2, the macroeconomic policies management framework, including the management of public debt. 3, the strategic budget intervention to address challenges. And then finally, 4, the financing framework for the financial year that we are trying to budget for. State of the economy and the growth prospects for financial year 23-24. Right, Prime Minister, the fiscal year 22-23, which we are running now, has focused on completing economic recovery by mitigating the adverse impacts of the various shocks to this economy. These shocks include, 1, COVID-19, as we know, pandemic, which disrupted supply networks, low demand for exports, foreign direct investments, and remittances have been negatively affected, as we all know. However, the pandemic also reinforced the need to boost domestic production using locally available raw materials for exports and for import replacement. 2, increase in commodity prices leading to imported inflation, particularly for fuel, raw materials, and other essential commodities. 3, increase in interest rates, which has increased the cost of borrowing money and reduced access to global capital due to the reversal of capital flow to advanced economies. 4, increase in public debt, which has reduced fiscal space and fiscal flexibility. 5, climate change effects, which has resulted in a gradual withdrawal of financing to non-renewable energy projects. The strong and timely intervention of the government in dealing with these various shocks has allowed economic activity to continue to expand, albeit at a very slow pace. Other performance indicators of the economy remain positive, although currently under severe strain. The performance of some key elements of the economy are discussed here below in summary. Economic growth. Abange. Security force. Please. I'm speaking to this very big gathering. You don't interrupt me, please.
No.
Economic growth. Preliminary GDP data shows overall growth of 4.6% in financial year 21-22, an improvement from 3.5% in the previous year as the economy continues to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. The industrial sector grew by 5.4% during the financial year 21-22 compared to 3.5% registered in the previous financial year, driven by a strong performance of the manufacturing subsector, whose activities expanded by 1.7% up to 3.9% from 2.2% during the financial year 2021. The services sector, which was the most affected by the pandemic restrictions, expanded only by 3.8% during the year, showing an upward improvement from 2.1% in the previous financial year, supported by strong growth in wholesale and retail trade, real estate activities, and a pickup in education. However, the transport services were affected by the high prices of fuel. Agriculture, forestry, and fisheries sectors performed at 4.3%, which was supported by favorable weather conditions and government intervention through provision of extension services, pesticides, water for production. Incomes and poverty. The income per capita increased from US dollars 936 in financial year 2021 to US dollars 1,052 in financial year 21-22, surpassing the NDP3 target. This improvement is partly attributed to increased government targeted expenditure to support economic recovery to offset shocks such as COVID-19. However, poverty and inequality remain critical development challenges to this country. Whereas poverty decreased marginally to 20.3% in financial year 19-20 from 21.4% in financial 16-17 and 2019-2020. The incidence in income poverty increased during the COVID-19 from 19% pre-pandemic to 22% during the pandemic. Savings, investment, and private sector credit. Uganda's savings as a percent of GDP marginally improved from 19% in financial 2021 to 19.2% in 21-22, surpassing the NDP target of 16.8%. On the other hand, the private sector credit improved from 7.1% to 8.5%, and its contribution to GDP increased from 14.4% to 15.2% over the same period. The private sector annual credit growth of 12.9% for financial 21-22 is attributed to the persistently high lending rates, risk aversion by banks due to the poor performance of many businesses, as well as the negative effect of the lockdown on the performance of many SMEs. Nonetheless, the private sector as a percent of GDP surpassed the NDP 3 target of 10.5% for the review period. Inflation. Annual headline inflation increased further to 9% in August this year from 7.9% registered in July, compared to 1.9% in August last year, reflecting a continued rise in prices of consumer goods and services across the country. The increase in inflation was mainly on account of higher transport costs as well as higher food and fuel prices. Government's response in curbing inflation has been through monetary tightening, as seen by the increase in the central bank rate. Over the medium term, inflation is forecast to stabilize around 5% target. Let me repeat this. Over the medium term, inflation is forecast to stabilize around 5% target. External sector. The Ugandan shilling appreciated against the US dollar in financial 21-22 by 2.4%. However, fiscal year 22-23 started with the shilling experiencing pressure to depreciate, to become weak, due to the developments in the global financial markets, which have raised the interest rates in Europe and North America. This has reversed capital flows from low-income countries, including Uganda, to the advanced economies, which are perceived to be safer. The depreciation of the shilling reinforces inflation pressures as imported goods and services become more expensive. Therefore, coordinated fiscal and monetary policy to control inflation dampens the secondary effects of the weak shilling on additional inflationary pressures. The current account deficit continued to widen in the first 3 quarters of this financial year. The current account deficit widened to US dollars 2,740 million over the period Q1, Q2 in financial year 21-22, compared to a deficit of US dollars 2,664 million registered over the period in Q1, Q3 of financial year 2021. This was attributed to a deterioration in the primary income deficit and a reduction in secondary income transfers. On a positive note, however, the deficit on the services account reduced as tourism activities continue to pick up following the full reopening of activities within the sector. Within the first 3 quarters of financial year 21-22, the deficit on the trade account was shilling 3,440 million US dollars, lower than the deficit of shilling 3,527 million dollars registered a year ago. This followed high export earnings from services and a decline in import payments of services such as transport. Over the same period, merchandise trade saw both export receipts and the import bill decline, largely due to exclusion of gold members from the trade during financial year 21-22, awaiting a tax resolution between the gold players and the government. As at the end of March 2022, the stock of international reserves stood at shillings 4,533 million, equivalent to 4.4 months of imports of goods and services. This has, however, dropped to US dollars 3,884 million as at July 2022, which is equivalent to 3.8 months of imports of goods and services. Going forward, strong external demand will boost exports, while improved remittances, FDI flows, and the continued recovery in tourism are expected to continue supporting the external sector accounts. Now I turn to interest rates. To support economic activity, the Bank of Uganda reference rate, the central bank rate, was revised upwards from 7.5% in June 2022 and more recently to 9% in August of 2022 to support the monetary policy efforts of the Bank of Uganda to fight inflation. Commercial bank lending rates for shilling-denominated credit were largely stable, averaging about 18% to 18.57% for the year ending June this year. This was partly supported by the accommodative monetary policy stance for the greater part of the financial year. The total value of loans approved increased to shillings 11,076.67 billion in financial year 21-22. Consequently, the stock of outstanding private sector credit at the end of the fiscal year amounted to shillings 19,809.3 billion, up from 18,187.686 billion in June 2021, registering a growth of 8.9%. This compares favorably against growth of 7.1% in the previous year. Our performance in the fiscal angle. COVID-19 pandemic, which affected economic activity, resulted in less domestic revenue compared to the previous years, with revenue to GDP falling to below 13%. The pandemic shock contributed to revenue shortfalls of shillings 3.2 trillion in financial 19-20 and shillings 2.2 trillion in financial 2021. At the same time, government expenditure was increased to was budgeted to increase to cater for COVID-19 pandemic-related spending, which accounted for 1.1% and 7.4% of total government expenditure in financial year 19-20 and financial year 2021, respectively. Therefore, the revenue shortfall in the two financial years and subsequent rise in the government expenditure led to a sharp increase in the budget deficit to 7.1% and 9.0% in financial year 19-20 and financial years 19-20 and 2021, respectively. This deficit was financed by a combination of reprioritization of the budget, external and domestic borrowing. As a result, a public debt to GDP rose from 41.0% in financial year 2019-2020 to 51.6% in the financial year 2021-22. The increase in borrowing has resulted in a significant increase in the cost of debt service over the last two financial years. Debt services to revenue has increased to 30.6% in financial year 21-22 from 21.7% in financial year 19-20. These have further reduced the fiscal space and fiscal flexibility on resources available for other government expenditures, including health, education, and water. There is therefore an urgent need to reprioritize infrastructure projects and postpone others in order to establish long-term fiscal sustainability. Let me repeat this. There is therefore an urgent need to reprioritize infrastructure projects and postpone others in order to reestablish long-term fiscal sustainability. Industrialization now. Over the last 2 years, as a result of supply networks disruptions, the government has actively supported a shift in private sector resources to production of essential commodities for domestic use, including pharmaceuticals, agro-processed products, and light manufacturers, also for export to the regional market of Southern Sudan, DRC Congo, and Burundi. Now, economic policy framework and public debt management. In financial year 23-24 and over the medium term, government's fiscal policy will prioritize improving competitiveness in the economy by lowering the cost of doing business while maintaining macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. This will entail focusing expenditure on projects and programs that have a high multiplier effect on the economy, including export growth, ensuring food security, import replacement, and job creation, increased domestic revenue mobilization, and prudent debt management strategies. Fiscal discipline efforts to boost domestic revenue by implementing the domestic revenue mobilization strategy and prudent borrowing strategies will be important for attainment of the high sustained growth, job creation, and socio-economic transformation. Government will continue to maintain the macroeconomic stability and support economic recovery through the use of coherent, cohesive, and well-coordinated fiscal and monetary policies. Macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability will be achieved through boosting domestic revenue mobilization by implementing the domestic revenue strategy and the use of growth-friendly fiscal consolidation. To maintain debt sustainability, external financing will be obtained on largely concession terms and near concessional terms to finance. Let me repeat. To maintain debt sustainability, external financing will be obtained largely on concessional terms or near concessional terms to finance projects which are critical for reducing the cost of doing business and therefore enhance competitiveness, exchange exports and import replacement, and facilitate regional trade. For example, the railway. We must do the railway, the oil pipeline, the refinery. Those are topmost in order for us to push the economy further. Through its public investment management reforms, government will emphasize maximizing efficiency gains from public investments to increase the returns. Now, the strategic budget interventions. With respect to the strategic interventions, government will restore the balance between infrastructure and human capital development. This is especially because the COVID-19 pandemic and its after effects worsened poverty levels and living standards. Investments in social sectors, especially health, education, and social protection, directly address poverty and income inequality. Investment in human capital development will therefore be at the core of the remaining 2 years of the plan, at par with infrastructure development. The thrust of the budget strategy for financial 23-24 is premised on 4 key strategic interventions areas, which are: 1, enhancing security, good governance, and the rule of law; 2, boosting economic recovery and enterprise resilience; 3, facilitating economic growth and competitiveness; and 4, promoting social development and protecting vulnerable communities. The above areas will be developed further in line with the program-based budgeting approach as detailed below. Enhancing security, good governance, and rule of law. Security and good governance. Improving security, good governance, and the rule of law is instrumental for economic prosperity. Next financial year, the strategy to enhance security will prioritize the strengthening of security and intelligence capability to protect persons, property, and maintain peace. Government will restructure ministries, departments, and agencies to enhance efficiency in service delivery for better results. In order to spur development at the lowest planning unit, parishes will be equipped and resourced to enhance service delivery under the parish development model as we all know it. Rule of law. In order to further enhance the rule of law, access to justice will be promoted by construction and equipping of courts and additional justice centers, recruit additional judicial and relevant non-judicial officers to extend judicial services nearer to the people, and the use of digital technology to enhance the capacity of the courts to handle cases and address case backlog. Courts will be strengthened to resolve disputes in special areas including land, commercial, family disputes, environment, standards, utilities, and tax disputes. Alternative dispute resolution and other case management interventions such as plea bargaining, small claim procedure, and mediation will be promoted. Now, boosting the economic recovery and enterprise resilience. Right Honorable Prime Minister, in financial 22-23, government started full-scale implementation of the parish development model as the last mile strategy to improve the service delivery and enhancing incomes and welfare of the 39% of households rooted in subsistence sector to the economy, to the money economy. The model has 7 pillars. I don't know whether I should repeat them. Let me repeat them for emphasis. There are 7 pillars, as we all know already. 1, production, processing, and marketing. 2, infrastructure and economic service development. 3, financial inclusion. 4, social service delivery. 5, mindset change and cross-cutting issues, that is gender, disability, and environment. Parish-based management information system. And 7, governance and administration. Since inception, the following have been done: mobilization of communities, groups, and enterprise, development of a parish model financial inclusion system, and a partial capitalization of approximately 7,860 circles. In financial 23-24, implementation of the PDM will largely be premised on pillar number 1 and number 3. And let me repeat number 1 and number 3 so that we all understand each other. Production, processing, and marketing. 3, financial inclusion. I would want to add number 5 as well. The mindset change and cross-cutting issues. The mindset change. There are people who we talk to, who run in constituencies, they are not bothered. They are not bothered at all. So to change those people that actually they need to work hard and intelligently together with the government so that they can make money is a bit of a tall order. I'll give you a very specific case. That not now immediately, but sometime one of my constituents was given a cow, and the cow fell sick. The old lady rang me and said, "Minister, my MP, go and tell Museveni to send me drugs or money for buy drugs because his cow is sick. Now it is Museveni's cow, not Maria's cow. Now to change that mindset is a total order. Particularly you people who are in politics, be ready for a hard task. Therefore, the financial 23-24, we government will consolidate on the initial progress achieved in 22-23 by all the implementing agencies, both central and local governments, in respect of all the 7 pillars. Right Honourable Prime Minister, following the measures government introduced to support enterprise during the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, the strategy going forward is to sustain economic recovery and build enterprise resilience. In the short term, the focus of the strategy is to reverse stagnating demand due to rising prices, increase availability and affordability of finance, and reduce cost of production in order to improve enterprise profitability. While fiscal policy will be constrained in order to stem inflation pressures, spending on activity that positively impact the private sector will be prioritized, including the clearance of arrears to the private sector. In the medium term to long term, increasing production and productivity of farms and households will be the key to boosting economic growth. Restoring production of pre-COVID-19 levels in all sectors of the economy will be actively pursued. Productivity gains from use of enhanced technologies in agricultural production will be applied and rolled out nationwide under the Parish development model and food security enhancement initiatives. In order to safeguard the environment, environmental protection law will be enforced to curtail encroachment on wetlands and swamps. Let me repeat this, because this is really going to destroy this country. In order to safeguard the environment, where people have cut all the forests, who have settled in the wetlands, who are moving on the mountains and cultivating those mountains, without making provision of how to track the water that will come down, we have a big problem. So in order to safeguard the environment, environmental protection law will be enforced to curtail encroachers on wetlands and swamps. Environmental conservation and land use planning and regreening will be promoted. The value chain development will also be enhanced to ensure linkage between production, post-harvest handling, storage, and processing. To improve on food security, farmers will be guided on enterprise selection, ensuring adequate quantities and qualities of the seed are supplied, among others, and supposed to increase production and productivity. Bulk and market their produce through circles. Parishes will be used as centers of delivery of production, marketing, and financial services to the small farmers. Providing affordable and easily accessible financing is critical to economic growth. Interventions to provide affordable and patient capital through Uganda Development Bank and the Uganda Development Corporation will be implemented fully. The financing of small and medium-scale enterprises will be enhanced with efficiency improvements in the MIOGA and the related schemes. Enhancing regional and global markets is the key element in our strategy to build a resilience of the economy. Interventions to increase trade within the East African and the COMESA region will be prioritized while the development of African continental free trade area takes shape. Efforts to lower production and trade costs to promote competitive production of quality tradable goods will be promoted. To this end, the standardization of quality production by Uganda National Bureau of Standards will be promoted. The two sectors that are going to be major direct and indirect drivers for economic growth in the medium term, namely the tourism and the mineral oil and the gas industries, will be prioritized. Both industries have the potential to bring in substantial foreign exchange earnings and provide employment, but also have significant indirect economic benefits, including linkages with the domestic enterprises and households. The tourism sector has historically been a major foreign exchange earner, but also has positive linkages to domestic economy as it provides employment and supports household incomes as most of its supplies are locally sourced. With the full reopening of the economies, worldwide further growth of tourism will be supported by enhanced marketing including development of Pearl of Africa destination brand, enhancing digital destination marketing, and marketing Uganda as a meetings let me repeat here. The tourism sector has historically been a major foreign exchange earner, but also has positive linkages to domestic economy as it provides employment and supports household incomes as most of its supplies are locally sourced. With the full reopening of the economies worldwide, further growth in tourism will be supported by enhanced marketing, including developing the Pearl of Africa destination brand, enhancing digital destination and marketing. In the minerals, oil, and gas sectors, efforts will be placed on implementation of ECOP project and the construction of the national oil refinery, together with exploration for priority minerals, including iron and steel, and the establishment of effective mineral regulations. Facilitating the economic growth and the competitiveness. In order to enhance economic growth and build competitiveness, infrastructure development will be further promoted. Further develop transport infrastructure. Key intervention next year include operationalizing the Hoima International Airport, upgrading strategic roads from gravel to bituminous surface, the maintenance of national and district community roads, and the rehabilitation and upgrade of aerodromes. In support to digital transformation, broadband connectivity will be extended to parish level and last-minute connectivity to expand access to affordable high-speed internet through the national backbone infrastructure, which will be implemented. In addition, development and commercialization of local ICT products and establish and support regional ICT incubation hubs will be supported, and the communities and SMEs will be trained to enhance digital literacy. To support the industrialization and existing industrial parks will be also expanded. The construction of one-stop border posts at Mpondwe and Bunagana will also be completed. Local industries will be supported to acquire appropriate technologies and product certification. In the power sector, rural electrification will be completed by covering the remaining districts and sub-counties all over the country. In addition, construction of additional substations to boost and regulate the generation, transmission, and distribution will be done. In order to diversify power sources, preparatory activity to construct a nuclear power plant will be fast-tracked. 30 square miles of land in Buyene district will be acquired for this purpose. In order to enhance regionally balanced economic development, regional development plans that reflect specific local advantages that need to be harnessed for local economic development will be designed and implemented in Acholi, Busoga, Teso, and Bukedi. Transport and power infrastructure will be extended to key growth areas, including tourism sites, to facilitate production and value addition. Growth corridors covering the Guru, Hoima, Kasese, and the Arua, Guru, Soroti, Maraba axis will be designed and developed to complete nationwide industrial development in addition to the Maraba, Kampala, Mbarara corridor. Improving social development. Human capital development remains central for the development of a healthy population and a skilled labor force. The provision of health, education, and safe water remains a priority in the budget strategy for the next financial year. Health. In the health sector, the strategy is to shift emphasis from predominantly curative-oriented health care system to a preventive healthy lifestyle promoting one. This new approach empowers individuals and communities to identify their needs and play an active role in maintaining their own health and well-being by increasing health literacy and access to health information at home, schools, and workplaces. Village health teams, the VHTs, will be strengthened through training and facilitation to enhance individual and community health programs. A key element in improving health care service delivery relates to staffing levels in the health system. Currently, staffing levels stand at 65% of the required staffing norms. Staff shortages are critical for anesthetists, pharmacists, dispensers, and critical operating theater staff. To address maternal and neonatal health care, health centers 4 operating theaters will be equipped and renovated to provide comprehensive emergency obstetric and neonatal care services. Staff accommodation will also be built at health centers, as health center 4 to ensure services is available at all times. For increased functionality of hospitals, the 12 regional equipment maintenance workshops will be enhanced to address the inadequacy and obsoleteness of medical equipment at all levels of care. This will include ensuring availability and functionality of the X-ray and laboratory services across the country. Now, education. The next financial strategy in the education sector aims to increase the relevance of learning and knowledge building to the needs of society and the economy in particular. To this end, the National Vocational Qualification Framework will be developed to indicate what a given certificate holder is expected to know, understand, and be able to do, and provide a reference point for assessing and recognizing learning required in a non-formal and formal settings. In addition, science, technology, engineering, mathematics in education, research, and innovation will be promoted to complete the cycle from research to product development and commercialization for national growth and social well-being. In order to improve the efficiency and effectiveness in education delivery, the Education Management Information System will be upgraded to track people and student enrollment, dropouts, and retention, and uniquely identifying learners, teachers, and institutions. The education sector will adopt enhanced digital-based system management by rolling out the Teacher Effectiveness and Learners Achievement System, e-inspection, Teacher Management Information System, and e-learning. With respect to improving learning outcomes in disadvantaged districts, staffing levels will be enhanced by recruiting 2,650 primary school teachers in the least staffed local governments to improve the teacher-pupil ratio. Now, water and sanitation. With respect to safe water provision and sanitation in both rural and urban areas, the construction and rehabilitation of large, medium, and small piped schemes and sanitation facilities will be enhanced with priority to underserved areas. Provision of sanitation facilities will be integrated in education and health projects to enhance effectiveness and capitalize on synergies. A water and sanitation information management system under the Uganda Intergovernmental Fiscal Transfer Program, UGFI, will be developed with the support from the World Bank to facilitate monitoring and reporting of access to safe water and sanitation. I'm about to finish. Domestic revenue, financial 23-24 financing framework. Domestic revenue. During the next financial year, 23-24, government intends to meet the target of domestic revenue by 0.5% of GDP, in line with the NDP 3 annual revenue enhancement target and the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. Next financial domestic revenues are projected to amount to shillings 29.78 trillion, of which tax revenue and non-tax revenue is projected to be 27.774 trillion and shillings 2.009 trillion respectively. This translates into a nominal growth in revenue of shillings 4.233 trillion, which is equivalent to 16.6%, up from 25.550.69 trillion projected revenue for financial 22-23. This reflects a growth of revenue effort of 0.5% from a projected 14.1% of GDP in financial 22-23 to the target of 14.6 in financial 23-24. Public debt. Public debt management next financial 23-24 will continue to be guided by the principles set out in the Public Debt Management Framework of 2018, the National Development Plan, and the Uganda Vision 2040. Focus will be on utilizing grants where available and the constitutional financing to implement projects within the priority areas of government, which I've said before. Going forward, gradual fiscal consolidation will lead to a decline in public debt below 50% of GDP in nominal terms. Priority shall be accorded to contracting debt on concession terms to lower interest payments and obtain debt service rescheduling through debt service suspension initiative, which would offer additional fiscal space. However, in the immediate and short term, the finalization of key infrastructure projects in the energy sector, such as transmission lines and associated substations, to increase the favorable and cheaper cost of doing business in Uganda, will instate new borrowing in financial 22-23. Furthermore, priority will be placed on investment in the oil and the gas sector infrastructure to get oil resources expected to accelerate Uganda's economic transformation. This investment includes, but not limited to, East African crude oil pipeline, oil roads, Kabale Industrial Park, and others. These investments need to be financed partly through borrowing in the financial 22-23. Government has finalized the preparation of its public investment financing strategy that guides on the alignment of the different financing options to the appropriate programs and prioritization. Now, resource envelope. Honorable Prime Minister and colleagues, ministers, members of parliament, the resource envelope for financial 23-24 will not have any significant changes from those of this financial year running. Accordingly, the preliminary resource envelope for next financial year will be issued in the first budget called circular for financial 23-24. Indicative planning figures will be issued at the program level, and the distribution to the respective votes will be done by the program working group level. But let me repeat this. The resource envelope for financial 22-24 will not have any significant changes from those of this financial year. That's the catchword. I conclude, Honorable Prime Minister and friends, this budget strategy aims at addressing the socio-economic challenges impacting on the livelihoods of our people through monetization of the economy, largely driven by implementation of the parish development model. In line with the program approach, each ministry, department, and agency is expected to continue to pursue its priorities under the third National Development Plan, which in turn will lead to the realization of socio-economic transformation agenda. While substantial progress has been achieved, more is expected in the next financial year as detailed in the 4 key areas identified. As such, prioritization of resources will be required throughout the process of investments of high value and returns. As the consultative process for financial year 23-24 therefore begins, all programs of government, private sector, development partners, and the civil society should be interlinked to this budget strategy to help government to achieve the theme of this budget and the overall vision of sustainably lifting Uganda to a middle income status. I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is physical fitness. Yes, we need to stand up, and the concerned person takes us through this exercise. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for what you have so far done. Let's stand up.
Thank you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, for being a champion of fitness lifestyle. May we stand up and raise our hands. We shall start by clapping to thank God for the gift of life. Let's clap, all of us. Keep clapping. Keep clapping. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hands on the side. Next to them. On the side. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. That's 4. That's 5. That's 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. Hands like this. Everybody. Hands like this. You need to execute that circulation because it doesn't flow. And the minister said that we need to be able to start coming. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, bend a little bit like this, man. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Allow your blood circulation to circulate in your cardiovascular system. Do this regularly. The PS of Ministry of Health can encourage this. Okay, we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now we are going to do a one-spot run. We test our cardiovascular system, okay? When I whistle, we run in one spot. Score! Run for Uganda! Run for Uganda! Faster! For East Africa! Score! Run! Run faster! For our families, let's go! Run for your family, everybody, run! Finally for humanity, let's go! I'll count 10. Touch your feet. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right Honorable Prime Minister. Okay. Our shoulders like that. We find a clap for Right Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you.
Honorable members, you are aware that prevention is better than cure. Physical activity is one way of keeping certain diseases away from your body. Thank you so much. Can I now invite our second presenter, then we go for tea break, and that is the Local Government Partners Group paper on budget strategy for the financial year 2023-2024. Can we have the presenter? Is Mr. Richard? It's you. You're welcome. Please clap for our presenter.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Members of Parliament, representatives of civil society organizations and private sector, and members of the diplomatic community, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me today. My name is Richard Nelson. I am the USAID Mission Director in Uganda, and I am here today representing the Local Development Partner Group, consisting of development partners, multilateral and bilateral, working closely with the government of Uganda for progress and development in this country. On behalf of the Local Development Partners Group, I wish to thank you, Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, for inviting us today to the National Budget Conference for fiscal year 2023-2024. This is an important event which will set the tone for key policy and spending discussions and decisions over the next financial year. As development partners, we would like to use this opportunity to strengthen our partnership and coordination efforts in sustaining and accelerating development outcomes in Uganda. This conference is being held while Uganda's, as well as the world's economy, is recovering from the impacts of COVID-19 and is facing high commodity prices and borrowing costs across the globe. We commend the government of Uganda and MOFPED for overall cautious approach to economic management and agree that fiscal consolidation is a responsible policy response to current economic challenges. We encourage the government to continue the path of prudent fiscal management by ring-fencing resources to protect the poor and pursuing concessional financing. We commit to supporting the government of Uganda in its endeavors to use resources effectively and efficiently. This conference is taking place after a successful high-level economic growth forum held a few weeks ago. Many key recommendations were proposed in that forum, and we trust that those recommendations will help guide the budgeting process for the coming financial year and beyond. We believe that fundamentals underpinning reforms in climate change adaptation and mitigation, domestic revenue mobilization, export promotion, and domestic value addition have been identified and, if implemented, can facilitate change. Given that we are here to consult on the budget, the development partners would like to emphasize a few priorities for fiscal year 2023-24 budget. There are 9 of these proposed priorities, and let me read them one by one. The first one is human capital development. We welcome the trend towards increasing budget allocations on human capital in line with the commitment under the IMF financed facility. Going forward, it will be important to increase expenditures for health and education further, specifically early childhood learning and skilling, reproductive health and health systems strengthening to make steady progress toward achieving sustainable development goals in the context of a rapidly growing population. An example of the growing need for such funding arose recently in the results of at least 2 studies finding that literacy in early grades has dropped precipitously in the past 2 years. Given that fiscal space is tight, this type of spending would have to be prioritized against other outlays that are less important for economic growth and development impact. It is important to note that enhanced domestic spending on human capital is likely to lead to higher donor contributions that will be offered in a matching fashion, such as under the Global Partnership for Education. Number 2, social protection. Given high commodity prices and higher poverty levels in the aftermath of the economic slowdown of the past 2 years, there is need to improve targeting and scale up resources available for social protection while still promoting debt sustainability. This includes increasing financing for women's economic empowerment, rolling out the labor-intensive public works program, especially for youth, and expanding social assistance grants for empowerment, or SAGE, by lowering the entry requirements into the program and including the entire eligible population. Number 3, agricultural productivity. To sustainably move households out of subsistence into the market economy, it is necessary to support agricultural productivity through investment in public goods, such as extension research and development, especially drought and disease-resistant seed varieties, promotion of climate-smart farming practices, safe and environment-friendly pest and disease control, investing in marketplace development, and stronger inspection and certification functions. There's also a need to prepare and integrate smallhold farmers in the value addition more than what has been done in the past. Number 4, transport infrastructure. We commend government's focus on expanding the national paved road network. Going forward, maintenance of existing old and newly paved roads must be prioritized to prevent erosion of assets and further congestion. We encourage the government to allocate more funding toward preservation of existing assets and allocate additional funding toward improvement of transport infrastructure in the greater Kampala metropolitan area, including for public transport. Number 5, trade and exports. The current high global prices are a challenge, but also an opportunity that can be realized if trade integration is deepened in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The Economic Growth Forum a few weeks ago included discussions around this topic that could help Uganda optimize its engagement around the free trade area. Among other things, Uganda should strive to improve the quantity and quality of exports, especially agriculture products, in which the country has a competitive advantage. We encourage the government to safeguard competitiveness and improve trade relations with the East African community, countries while minimizing non-tariff barriers, including products failing to meet sanitary and phytosanitary standards. Ensuring product quality through certification under the leadership of the Uganda National Bureau of Standards is critical. Number 6, green growth, renewable energy investment, and climate change adaptation and mitigation. The abundance of renewable energy resources that Uganda has presents a strong opportunity. Recent experience with climate change-related disasters underlines the importance of ensuring that any new infrastructure is climate resilient to avoid loss of human life and property, as well as disruptions to commerce and production. At the same time, more investment in power connectivity and access to low-cost electricity must be prioritized. Number 7, domestic resource mobilization. Uganda is implementing the Domestic Revenue Mobilization Strategy, which aims to increase the country's tax to GDP ratio to 16 to 18% by 2023-24, and achieve tax to GDP ratio growth of 0.5% every financial year. These ambitious targets can be achieved by rationalizing tax expenditures that have grown substantially over recent years and have eroded the tax base. MOFPED and URA estimate that revenue foregone from tax expenditures has increased from 0.87% of GDP in fiscal year 2016-17 to 1.56% of GDP in fiscal year 21-22. Data is incomplete, and other estimates point to much higher levels of tax expenditures. We encourage MOFPED to rationalize tax expenditures gradually over the next few years by eliminating those whose cost effectiveness and value addition and growth impact are lowest, while continuing to improve costing, reporting, and evaluation. Enhanced revenue collection by local governments can also significantly contribute to achieving the set targets. Number 8, domestic arrears. We commend the government on the strategy to clear and prevent domestic arrears and for staying on track with those commitments. Stronger controls and sanctions on accounting officers who undertake unauthorized commitments are needed going forward. Better budgetary planning and fully financed supplementary expenditures would help avoid arrears accumulation. And finally, parish development model. We welcome the objectives pursued under the parish development model to lift subsistence households and link them to markets. We look forward to reviewing data gathered during this first year of implementation and working with the government to identify those areas of the parish development model that have been most successful and those which have not, in order to build on these year one outcomes. Those 9 priorities constitute areas of general consensus among development partners as we look at the economic and fiscal environment in the coming years. Honorable Minister, let me conclude by thanking you again on behalf of the Local Development Partner Group for inviting us to participate in this important conference today. We wish you successful deliberations in designing a budget that will address current economic challenges and the NDP 3 objectives of job creation and prosperity. We look forward to further discussions on how we, the development partners, can best engage to support sustainable and inclusive growth in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Another applause. Honorable ministers and members, we are going for a tea break. I think let me allocate 30 minutes for that activity. We shall be back here at 12:26. 12:26, 30 minutes. Okay, 12:30. Thank you so much. let's go for breakfast. Can somebody lead us in prayer? You pray for our breakfast. Pray. Okay, stand up for a prayer.